think we'll get started. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. This is our third official online virtual workshop. With everything going on, we have to stop having them in the high schools. So now we're having our virtual workshops. Thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna try to keep you engaged as best I can tonight. A lot of great information. So please stick around throughout the whole workshop because we'll have a special bonus for you towards the end. So I'm sure a question on all of your minds is, what am I gonna do about this high cost of college? It's getting so darn expensive. And there's no reason that you have to go heavily into debt and raid your retirement savings to pay for school. So I'm glad you folks have come here tonight. Again, my name is Chris Gray. I'm actually the Vice President for College Funding Systems, and we're at the leading college consulting firm here in the Northwest. We hold these workshops all throughout the Northwest, in Seattle, of course, down there in the Tri-Cities, Oregon, Idaho. So there's a good bet that we worked with some of your friends and family in the past. So tonight we're going to be revealing a whole new world of information to you about how you can legally and ethically arrange your financial affairs so you can qualify for the most amount of aid possible. A good statistic to be aware of right off the bat is that student loan debt and parent loan debt, as it deals with college, has currently reached $1.7 trillion. It surpassed credit card debt, folks. And I want you to continually ask yourself tonight, how did we get to this number? And that's why I'm glad you folks have come here tonight, because this is a special time for you getting ready to come up for college. And my job here tonight is to help keep you out of that $1.7 trillion in debt. Great that we have you here tonight. I have my assistant Mariah helping me out with this. And so as you ask questions, you can ask questions through the GoToWebinar. We'll have time for a Q&A session at the end. And so if you can wait until then, I'd really appreciate it. Also, you can switch back and forth what screen's bigger. You can make me bigger on your screen by, of course, hitting the lower left-hand corner, I believe, with your finger if you have a touch screen or your mouse. Or, of course, you can switch around and have the PowerPoint presentation be large as well, too. So I want you folks to know also that tonight is not a sales presentation. Our deal with the high schools that we hold these workshops at is that this information is completely free. We help out as much as possible. You see, the high school, they have a pretty good college night themselves, but they really just focus on the FAFSA in the admissions process. We talk about the financial side of college, which the high school is really not qualified to do or have the time to do, all right? Also want you folks to know that you never have to pay for a scholarship search. So over the months and weeks and years to come, you may perhaps get emails and stuff in your mail trying to talk you into paying for a scholarship search. These are completely free and usually good signs of a scam. So we'll talk about scholarships more here tonight. All right, so again, my name is Chris Gray, and I'm actually the Vice President for College Funding Systems. A little bit about myself is when I graduated from high school, my mom had to return to Montana, where we're from, to be with my grandma who was diagnosed with cancer, kind of leaving me all alone in the big city, Spokane, since I'm from Montana, to figure out a way to pay my bills. So to make a long and arduous story short, I went to college off and on for about 9 years, taking time off to work and then also going to college. But the whole time I was getting financial aid in the form of grants and free money. So after 9 years, you no doubt guessed, I became a professional at filling out those forms and getting as much aid as I could to support myself. So I'm the type of person that believes everything happens for a reason. My time in college and struggling to get financial aid was really the perfect training for my job now. And I absolutely love what I do, guiding families through this process, giving them a battle plan and keeping them out of that $1.7 trillion in debt. A little bit about our company, College Funding Systems. Our president, Stuart Grossman, he has been in the financial arena for over 25 years now. And about 15 years ago, a lot of his clients came up to him, of course, and said, hey, what about college? Can you help me out here? Because you see, traditional financial planners, they really don't focus on college funding. They have a cookie cutter approach to all this, 529s for everyone. And we'll talk about 529s tonight. So it prompted him to do some research. And he came across our parent company, which is called SET. I encourage you to write that down. S-E-T, it stands for Strategic Education Technologies. Give us a Google. What they do is teach financial professionals the ins and outs of college planning, bringing educators together with financial planners, okay? Because there are literally dozens of legal and ethical loopholes that can help you folks qualify for more. You see, the very low income families, they usually qualify for a ton of aid without even trying, but they need help too. Very high income families just write a check, but you have to be pretty high income nowadays to do that. And a couple high income families recently got in trouble for that, right? But it's the middle to the upper middle class, probably the majority of you folks, who really get crunched out of the financial aid formula. So what I'm going to do is go through a step-by-step process on college funding, which I'm sure many of you will be surprised in what you're going to learn. Also give you the real scoop. You see, there's tremendous misconceptions about college planning, college funding, and how it actually works. No reason you have to raid those retirement savings and go heavily into debt. So let's get started here. Oh, as I mentioned too, tonight is a workshop, not a lecture. I'm sure you don't want to hear me just talk for an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to participate with you as much as possible. So let's go ahead and take a look at your workshop folder here. Actually, you don't have one of those because you're not at the workshop. So we'll actually be mailing one of these all to you as our gift at the end. That's one of the bonuses I talked about. But these handouts are actually in the handout section of the GoToWebinar, but also they were hopefully emailed to you as well, right, Mariah? Cool. So there's a bio for myself here, an excellent bio. Our president, Stuart Grossman, as well too. His bio is on that yellow sheet you may see. We talked about scholarships, right? Here's a great piece through FastWeb. FastWeb. I encourage all of you to please Google FastWeb. This is a free resource for privately funded scholarships. I'm actually an administrator for FastWeb. Excellent company, excellent program to get private scholarships. Let's see here. What else do we have? The college game plan. This is what keeps parents and students home and up at each night. That's a plan to pay for college. So at the end of the workshop, I'll talk about how you can get this bonus. We're actually going to mail this folder to you with all these great handouts in there to help you really start to identify the problem. Why is college funding a problem? Of course, we live in the age of Google. You can pretty much Google anything, but there's lots of great information, lots of bad information as well too. So we're going to help you kind of weed through the flack, if you will. But let's also talk about this workshop questionnaire that hopefully you have tonight. We're going to talk about this a little bit throughout the workshop. This is a chance to attempt to participate together. This is fillable, right, Mariah? I think a little bit.
Yes, we're having a problem with your audio.
Okay.
Be sure it's off. Did you make sure it's?
What did they say? What did they say was wrong with the
Some
audio?
people saying they can't hear you. There's no sound.
They may have to dial in. So if you can't hear the workshop for some reason, it may have, yeah, depending how you've dialed in, either using computer audio or phone call. On your computer audio is pretty straightforward. With a phone call, you'll have to dial in and use an audio pin. Let's take a look here right quick for you.
I just got another person saying that they can hear you.
Okay, good. So yeah, it's all this, thanks for joining us tonight, folks. Technology for everyone is a little fuzzy at sometimes. We just got to play and try to work together here a little bit. If you can't hear, you just have to either pick phone call or computer audio, and you can also dial in your phone. You have to put in the access code and even audio pin. So moving along though, this workshop questionnaire, even Mariah can try to communicate with some of you who perhaps can't hear through the chat section. This is a chance for us to work together. So there's some questions here that we'll review together in just a couple seconds. Try to have some participation, right? But here on the back of the workshop questionnaire is where I talk about part 2 of the workshop. So tonight is part 1, a lot of great general information that everyone will benefit from. But when it comes to college funding, folks, everyone's situation is different. So as our deal with the high school, we actually offer an hour of our time free to you folks to give you what's called a financial aid test or a free evaluation. It's a chance to sit down with us one-on-one. It of course will be virtual, right? And we'll be able to tell you where you stand for financial aid at colleges you are interested in. This is very valuable. I'll talk about it towards the workshop. Mariah can easily email you a link to get on our calendar for that. Completely free for everyone who's attending the workshop. All right, moving along. So today's high cost of college. Let's see here. Sometimes my mouse has to get here. Good. There we go. So technology is fun. Come on, change slides there, mister. There we go. So in my research over the years, I have given probably about 500 of these financial aid tests per year to families over the last 12 years. A lot of social research there, right? And I've learned so much. I want to share my experience with you folks tonight. So the 5 biggest mistakes I found are the college loan trap you see up there. There's different types of loans out there for college, some good, some bad. We'll talk about those. Making assumptions about financial aid. Again, there's so many misconceptions about financial aid and how it actually works. Missed forms and deadlines. The FAFSA recently went through a big change a couple years ago, but people are still adapting to this. It used to be available in January of the senior year. Now it's available in October of the senior year. So your family's been given less time as families in the past to plan. Big problem. We'll talk about that. Selecting the wrong college and career path. How many people changed majors? Well, big reason why students are going to college for longer than 4 years, changing that major. We'll talk about that. And failure to plan ahead. I'm glad you folks have come here tonight. It still amazes me the lack of planning that goes into the college process, college funding. Oh yes, we may of course do SAT prep and admissions and look at schools and all that kind of stuff, AP classes running start, but not a lot of planning on the financial side of college. And so that's where we're going to help you out here tonight in part 1 and part 2 of the workshop. So today's high cost of college. Well, why is it so darn expensive? Why does it keep on going up like this? Well, first off, there's less and less aid coming in from governmental sources because of federal cutbacks constantly happening. There just is not as much financial aid flowing into the pot as there used to be. And unfortunately, with everything going on, I'm a fiduciary, a financial professional as well. I think this problem is only going to get worse. Less money coming in to the college help pot. College teachers' salaries going up. I'm sure all of us like to receive a raise once in a while. Was becoming more and more expensive to be good professors on campus. Tremendous maintenance, upkeep, and repairs. I always like to ask my live audiences, how many people have gone on college visits? I hardly ever see any hands. Go on college visits when you can now. I know, shucks, I know many of you probably had some college visits scheduled, but this will, of course, blow over sooner or later. Life will go on, folks. But usually when you visit these colleges, you'll see some kind of construction project. They're always building something new, and guess who gets to pay for that? Also touching base on that right quick, I know many of you perhaps have an undermotivated student who perhaps is sick of answering, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. Well, take them on a college visit, maybe just a virtual college visit. You can do actual virtual college visits, right? That will get that student excited in many cases about college. But be careful where you take them on that first college visit, even if it's virtually, of course, because usually that first one's their favorite. So, don't show them maybe Harvard, for example, all right? Lastly, college costs are increasing faster than inflation rates. Many colleges by a staggering 20% each year. And there are many reasons for this, but usually shrinking endowment funds and state budget woes are to blame. So as I mentioned, tonight is a workshop, not a lecture. So let's go to your workshop questionnaire here, and let's take a look at question number 1. Please, maybe some of you had a chance to print this out. In the future, if we have them arrive, maybe encourage them to print it out, maybe in the email we send out. But also, if you have it up on your computer screen here, we can kind of interact together a little bit, all right? So question number 1 asks, if you could wave a magic wand and have the best scenario for sending your child to a college of their dreams, well, what would that look like? Maybe a great 4-year university like Washington State, Gonzaga, a private school, in-state, out-of-state. Jot down some thoughts there, folks, and please do not think about price. But question number 2, what are some of the obstacles that are keeping you folks from this ideal college scenario? So for my live audiences, let's see here. For my live audiences, folks, I always like to ask them, what are some of the obstacles keeping you from their ideal scenario? So I know you can't, of course, answer me. Some of you can throw them there in the chat section if you'd like, and maybe Mariah could shout them out or she hears some of those obstacles. But what I normally hear right off the bat, of course, number 1, is the cost of college. And this is a big problem, folks. Of course, you can go online and get sticker price of the college. Anybody can do that. But what are your actual out-of-pocket costs going to be after financial aid? All right, what are you actually going to pay for college? People really have no idea on this. So how can you really financially plan for something if you don't know how much it's going to cost? So that's a huge obstacle. Also, I see grades, of course, come up quite a bit. And when I think about grades, I think about AP classes. So again, take advantage of my social research, folks, in my experience. Do some research on AP classes. Now, the college wants to see you challenge yourself. They don't want to see your students struggle either. And I've seen so many students overload themselves with too many AP classes, okay? Too many AP classes and really hurt their GPA, okay? Grades have a huge amount to do with merit-based scholarships. So really finding the right fit college where those AP classes may be applicable is very, very important. I mean, if you don't get 4s or 5s on those AP tests, they're not going to count anyways. And maybe you don't need that rigor of a schedule depending on the college you're looking at. If it's just a normal state school, in many cases, there's 2 sides of this equation. Definitely talk with your guidance counselor, your career counselor, but also it's a good idea to do some research on a college funding advisor like myself and get both sides of the story there. Also, SAT and ACT. Well, which one's better, right? Which one's better, the SAT or the ACT? Well, the ACT is historically more science-based, while the SAT is a little bit of everything, so to speak. The colleges look at both of these the same, okay, but some students will score better on one versus the other. In Oregon, where I go quite a bit, they really focus on the ACT, while here in Washington, we focus on the SAT. which is kind of silly because again, some students will score better on one versus the other. Max of 36 on that ACT, max of 1600 on the SAT. This is where the money's at, folks. Good grades and good SAT scores. So do some research, please, on some good SAT prep. Definitely worth it. SAT or ACT prep. Khan Academy is a great free resource, but it usually just talks about, they just really focus on the SAT. Definitely worth your time and money to maybe look into some professional SAT or ACT prep. The return on investment can be significant. Again, many of these scholarships for good grades and good SAT scores range from $5,000 to $30,000 per year. Okay, good. Well, there's some of our obstacles. Let's keep on moving along. So unfortunately, college is expensive no matter where your kids go to college. And this is a huge problem right off the bat. People don't understand how the cost of college is actually calculated. Many people just assume it's tuition, believe it or not, seriously. And of course, there's all kinds of expenses now that your son or daughter is away from mom or dad. There's of course tuition, room and board, books, miscellaneous fees, travel expenses, all kinds of stuff. So the way I illustrate this in my live workshop is we play a little game so we can kind of use our imaginations and pretend that we're all in the same room together. So one of my favorite game shows as a kid growing up was The Price is Right. Loved The Price is Right. So let's play a little Price is Right tonight, okay? And the item up to bid, so to speak, is our book that I co-authored with our president, Stuart Grossman, How to Give Your Child a 4-Year College Education Without Going Broke. Pretty much the workshop in a book. I know I speak fast. I can only get so much information in an hour and 15 minutes, so this will help slow it down for you a little bit. And this is one of the bonuses that all of you will get at the end of the workshop, okay? And I'll talk about that. So here's the question, though. You know, we're talking about that cost of attendance, right? That's our first variable in the financial aid formula. We're going to have 3 different variables for that financial aid formula, 3. And the first variable is COA, cost of attendance. So what do you think the cost of attendance is for 1 year at Washington State? You know, whoever gets the closest will actually win the book. That's how I work it, of course, in the live workshops. Well, now we can't do that. So I want some of you to guess. You can type it into the chat bar if you like with Mariah just for fun. I mean, I hear all kinds of stuff. I hear maybe $12,000 per year, $50,000 a year. I hear that discrepancy all the time and I say, hey, pause, right? Look what we're doing here. We have no idea how much a school like Washington State costs, and this is in our backyard, 12, 50,000, 40, 35. How much does it cost? Actual retail price is $25,936 per year. $25,936 per year at Washington State. Times that by 4 years. We're over 100 grand, right? Please keep on asking yourself, how do we get to $1.7 trillion in debt? This is how. College is expensive. How many of you have more than one kid to send to college? 2, 3, 4? Congratulations. Times that by that, a lot of money. Just for fun, what do you think the cost of attendance is for 1 year at a great private school like Seattle Pacific? People are usually getting a little bit closer on this because, again, there's little cheat answers there on my PowerPoint if you're paying attention. So Seattle Pacific costs right around $59,115. $60,000 nearly, folks. Times that by 4 years and multiple kids. And I keep on updating these reports all the time, once a year. This cost just keeps on going up, all right? So that is sticker price, and believe it or not, many people pay that because of this daunting process, not a lot of information, falling into it blind, very expensive. So let's talk about cutting down that cost of college. So how is a family supposed to pay for all that? So let's talk about that a little bit. Let me see if I can move this a little bit on my screen. That's going to help me out see my slides a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. Cool. All right. There we go. So let's talk about this a little bit. So let's go back to your workshop questionnaire here. Workshop questionnaire. Question number 1, what's your dream, right? We can wave a magic wand, have the best scenario to send your child to a college of their dreams. What would that look like? Question number 2, what are some of the obstacles keeping your family from that? And then question number 3, how are we supposed to pay for all of it? So let's have some participation again here. You can keep on throwing down answers in the chat. Mariah's keeping an eye on those. I would love to try to have you folks participate as much as possible in this because, of course, it's just not the same virtually, but I'll do my best here. So question number 3 asks, your child is enrolled and on the way to college, and after exhausting all grants, scholarships, and financial aid resources, your family's still left with $100,000 in school costs to pay over the next 4 years. So after all the financial aid is gone, grants, scholarships, all that stuff, grandma and grandpa's money, whatever, right? you're still left with $100,000 to pay over the next 4 years. So below are 6 potential solutions to acquire those needed funds. So go ahead and rank these 1 to 6. 1's the first place you're probably going to go to pay for college. 6 you would never touch in a million years. And we'll have a little virtual fund survey and see where you're at, and I'll answer these options in more depth. Hey, maybe they're all 6s, right? 1's the first place you're going to go to pay for college. 6 you would never touch. This is an excellent financial exercise, everybody, okay? Now we know roughly how much college costs. Now you need to start to think about which assets you feel comfortable spending and in what order. This is a great financial exercise. All right. All right. So you see on my easel here, beautiful. That looks a little bit better. You see on my easel here, we have all these different options. We have savings, cash flow, student loans, parent loans, home equity, retirement. How many people out there in virtual world are going to go to savings number 1 or 2 to pay for college? I usually see a couple hands there, right? These savings here, for example, these usually count against us for financial aid. What a bummer, right? That $529 you've been saving in, that is an example of savings, okay? And of course, when it comes to savings, we don't want to, of course, relinquish and spend, exhaust all of our savings, right? So this is why we need to start planning on which pots of money we're going to use to pay for college. Cash flow, we need to figure that out too. How much can you afford out of your monthly budget, annual budget to pay for college? $500 a month, $6,000 a year, $1,000? How many people would use cash flow is 1 or 2 to pay for college? You think about that. So folks, these are the best ways to pay for college here at the top. Because once we get below this line, we have to start to borrow, right? So how many of you out there think it's a good idea to have some student loans to pay for college? Have the student have some skin in the game? Usually the most popular answer. Now, of course, we don't want our students to graduate with too much student loan debt, but having some skin in the game, I think, is an excellent idea. Folks, I see so many kids go off to Arizona State, University of San Diego, great colleges. They come back the very next year because they didn't have any skin in the game, low GPAs, mommy and daddy just paid for it all. And now it's a pretty expensive party to have, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year to go to that type of college. So I think some student loans are okay. Parent loans, these are loans from the federal government, and they usually give you as much as you need. So be careful with these parent loans, folks. We're going to talk about these tonight. These are usually the worst way to pay for college, all right? Not a big fan of them at all. We'll get into some more depth there. Home equity. So before you really dismiss home equity, let me explain that a little bit. In our professional financial opinion, this is not the worst way to pay for college if, I repeat, if you have to borrow. Interest rates are still awful low, folks, okay? You can stretch that over 30 years, right? 30 years. So that means that the payments are small. It's still tax deductible up to a certain amount under current tax law. Went through some changes, but still can be tax deductible, which is awesome. And believe it or not, folks, this could be the cheapest money that you ever borrow, okay? So hopefully some of you may consider home equity, or I could educate you on how to use home equity. Please do some research for me. There's a very famous gentleman out there. His name is Rick Edelman. I'm not sure if you can see that name, Rick Edelman. Why don't you go ahead and type that in the chat thing there, Mariah. Rick Edelman, R-I-C-E-D-E-L-M-A-N. Very famous financial advisor. He talks about the 11 great reasons to carry a big, long mortgage, which I know sounds completely crazy to some of you. Give it a read. I've actually adopted his financial teachings myself and built a solid financial future for my family based off of Rick Edelman's recommendations. Anyways, we've talked about savings, okay? We've talked about the different borrowing options out there. We have retirement savings as well too. So yeah, retirement savings, definitely my least way to pay for college, least favorite way. We have, Roths and IRAs and 401ks. The way to look at it, folks, is there's lots of ways to save, right? Some pay as we go and borrowing options, but I'm not aware of any loans out there for your retirement. Ha ha ha. Usually I get some laughs in the crowd. That's a joke, but usually those financial jokes are not too funny. We've talked about savings. We've talked about borrowing. Let's talk about scholarships, the big one. Folks, let's try to be binary here. Two main types of scholarships. We have scholarships from private resources like FastWeb. This is a privately funded scholarship, okay? But then we have scholarships from the college itself, a university scholarship, Gonzaga scholarship, WSU scholarship, Harvard scholarship, okay? So let's talk about the privately funded scholarships first, okay? So I usually have another giveaway here where I talk about giving away a handbook or something like this. We have these great handbooks, folks, that come from our parent company. The College Admissions Application Bootcamp, for example, talks about filling out applications, doing essays, staying safe on campus, all kinds of great stuff. All of you will get this bonus towards the end of the workshop for attending tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We will mail this out to you along with the folder, okay? So here's the question though. We're talking about privately funded scholarships. So I want you to start thinking of financial aid as a pie, okay? Out of all the aid kids actually get to go to college, a big pie. So what percentage of this pie do you think comes from privately funded scholarships from companies like Intel and Nike and Boeing and Microsoft? People are all over the board here again, and it really identifies the problem again. We don't know how much college costs, and we don't know where the money's at. Some people say 80, 90%, 50%. The actual percentage of money that gets used to pay for college from privately funded scholarships is 3.4%. Isn't that amazing? 3.4%. Let me explain. Well, remember we talked about the cost of college, roughly $100,000 per year at a state school? Well, a student will do an application here, an application there, an essay, maybe you get 500, 1,500 there. On average, the most that most kids get is right around $3,000, okay? Remember, $3,000, $3,500, these scholarships are usually not renewable. They're only good for 1 year. $3,500, 100,000, 3.4, 3.5%. Pretty amazing, right? We'll talk about where the money's at here in just a second, okay? Then we have going to a cheaper college, okay? Going to a cheaper school. And what I'm going to show you tonight is please don't shop for colleges based off a sticker price. Some schools are a lot more affordable than others that have a higher sticker price. Some of these private schools offer a lot of financial aid, folks, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight is there's no reason that you have to go to a cheaper college. We want to cast a net wide and look at a lot of schools. All right. Another good tip there too is just not to consider, going to community college and then transferring. I know many so-called financial professionals perhaps mention that, and that can be a good track for some students. I actually took that track myself. I started at the community college and then transferred to Eastern Washington University. I graduated at Eagle. But when I finally made it to Eastern Washington, that was a beacon of light. That's when I got serious about my education, changed my life forever. It was great being on that college campus, like-minded students trying to better themselves, higher education. You learn so much on the college campus besides just your major. So we feel if you have a student that's very smart, motivated, or just wants to go to school, has great ambition, they should go right to the four-year university right off the bat. I wish I would have. Many students who go to community college, they still work, they live at home. Those credits are not always transferable to the new college, okay? You end up taking the same classes again. Also good to know that transfer students on average don't get as much financial aid as incoming freshmen. That college wants you there for 4 years and they'll try to make it happen, okay? Okay, good. Not going at all, the last bullet point there, and that is not an option in my opinion. I'm so glad you folks are here. Great information out there. Saw a commercial the other night from a virtual university talking about 60% of new careers require a college education. I owe everything to college. I never dreamed that my life could be so good, and it's all because of a college education. Numbers are there. The blue-collar jobs are drying up in this country. So with a plan, folks, a plan, you can make this a reality. I make it a passion of mine to make sure that every family, no matter their income or assets, can go to a great college and finish in 4 years. That's what it's all about. Very rewarding work. All right, so a little financial aid. Let's play a little myth versus reality. So these myths come from the misunderstanding of the types of financial aid. Two types of financial aid, folks. We have need-based aid based off of income and assets, and we have merit-based aid based off your grades and SAT scores. So first, we're going to focus on the need-based aid. So the first myth I hear time and time again is, Chris, my income is too high. My buddy Bill, we make about the same. He went through this process. He didn't get financial aid. Why even go through this? It's a waste of time. I'm not going to qualify for anything anyways. Huge, huge mistake, okay? Huge mistake. Because filling out the forms and doing all that stuff shows the college which pot of money to grab from, their need-based pot or their merit-based pot. So I'd say the cutoff point for need-based financial aid for income is right around $220,000 per year. If you make $220,000 or less per year of adjusted gross income, you still have a shot of qualifying for need-based aid. And that's definitely a top 5% income, okay? So most people are below that. Now, if you have several $100,000 in assets as well, that can be difficult, but right around 220,000 or less, you have a chance at need-based aid, depending on the school. Grades are too low. Hey, Chris, my child's not an A student. Financial aid only goes to the smart kids. Again, they have a misunderstanding of need-based and merit-based aid. When it comes to need-based aid, it has nothing to do with the kids' grades, unless they're failing and can't get into college. It's based off a formula: income, assets, and number of kids in college at the same time, okay? Nothing to do with grades. Chris, I own a home, a lot of equity in our primary home. We're not going to qualify for any aid. This actually stems from some truth. On the old forms, they used to count the home you live in against you. Talk about unfair. They changed that finally. So the home you live in does not count against you for financial aid for federal purposes, okay? So it will never find its way in the FAFSA. That home equity should never be on the FAFSA. Now, rental properties, other properties, they do. So that's where you have to be careful about valuing your other properties. So in our book here, that I will give everyone a chance to get towards the end as our bonus for attending tonight, I talk about this. There's something called a minimum derived value. Go ahead and give that a Google. A housing index multiplier. Give that a Google. It'll give you a lowball estimate of the value of your home. That's what you want to use, okay? Now is not the time to brag about how much that rental property is worth, okay? Now, some private schools, they will take a look at your primary home. So again, this process is complicated, I know. Aid is only for special groups, minorities, athletes, and special talents. And again, it's solely based off a formula: income, assets, and number of kids in college, not just for special groups, for need-based aid. It's an easy process. I hear this time and time again. Oh, this is an easy process. I hear this from financial aid officers, some counselors, bless their heart. Oh, it's an easy process. You know, just do your homework, do the SAT, fill out some applications, and you'll get all the aid you deserve. Huge, huge mistake. This is a process, folks, that you have to take control of. Or I assure you, just like anything else in life, if you kind of sit back and let it happen to you, you're going to lose thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars in financial aid that's there if you take control of the process. And that is not a pitch, folks. I see that happen all the time. These families come to me after their kids already in college and they're financially broken. And I say, darn, look at this right here. Mistake, mistake, mistake. We could have got you more. The college aid office can help, okay? And of course, they can help with deadlines and what paperwork you need to fill out, but they're not going to help you get more financial aid from them. It's a conflict of interest. They have a limited funds to spread around to a lot of kids. So the college aid office is not going to help you get more money from them, trust me. All right, so how much aid is actually available? Quite a bit of money out there. There's about $275 billion of aid and tax relief if you know where to get it. And again, I've had some families over the years say, hey, Chris, is the money there? Or is it really okay to do all these financial strategies to qualify for more financial aid when there's perhaps other needy families out there? You folks have been paying for these programs for most of your adult lives in your tax dollars. And now the time has come to get aggressive. Let's get aggressive. You don't want to be nearly 60 years old or almost getting ready to retire and have a ton of college debt. That can be financially devastating. Again, I see these things all the time. $275 billion of aid and tax relief if you know where to get it. So the money is there. Let's see the actual breakdown in the financial aid pie here. The green section there, federal loan program, 44%, the biggest slice, and that's where folks are getting into trouble. Parent loans and student loans, we'll talk about that. Federal grants, about 12%. Did anyone receive a Pell Grant? I did. That's where they're coming from, the federal grants right there. The states, 6.6%, and unfortunately shrinking, though we're pretty lucky here in Washington State. Washington State is one of the better places for state scholarships. Unfortunately, a little bit better than the state of Oregon we found over the years. Tuition tax credits, 8.3%. So actually, that's more than the states. Tuition tax credits are more than the states when it comes to the money that's out there. You can receive a $2,500 tax credit for sending your child to college, okay? So make sure you take advantage of that. The VA, the yellow slice there, about 2.8%, GI Bill, things like that. But take a look at the collegiate resources. That's what we're going to primarily focus on tonight, folks. The collegiate resources, the college itself, nearly 20% of a pretty darn big pie. So the college itself, cast the net wide. Look at a lot of different schools. Just like people, some colleges have a lot of money, some don't. Some give you a lot in free money, some just a lot in loans. Just think how nice it would be to know these things beforehand, maybe. And take a look at private sources down there, 3.4%. Huge takeaway, folks. This is part of the problem. Families will spend all their time and effort going after the crumbs, going over that 3.4% you see there at the bottom of the pie in privately funded scholarships. They don't know where the money's at, right? So they'll spend all their time and effort going after the crumbs. Sally, do scholarship applications, do them. Parents hound, and the poor kid only gets a couple $1,000s, a drop in the bucket. You want to spend the majority of your time and effort going after the big slice of the pie, collegiate resources, tuition tax credits, the state and federal funds. That's where the money's at. So let's get into some real meat and potatoes, folks. The financial aid formula. You definitely want to understand how this financial aid formula works and how you can take advantage of it, of course, legally and ethically, of course. So formula is COA, and we already talked about cost of attendance. And remember, that's everything. It's tuition, room and board, books, travel, miscellaneous fees. You really have no control over this variable besides where your kids go to college. Now, there will be something called a net price calculator on the college's website. Take that with a grain of salt. It can be very accurate or not the full story. So don't get disappointed or discouraged after you run your numbers through that net price calculator. You really have no control over this variable except where your kids go to school, okay? Minus cost of attendance minus your EFC. Now the EFC, folks, stands for expected family contribution. And this is the number that's generated when you do the FAFSA. And I love to pick on senior families that are in the crowd, but I can't do that right now because this is all virtual, right? But I always love to ask that senior family, because they've already done the FAFSA by this point, better have, what is your EFC? Folks, I get so many blank stares. EFC, what are you talking about? You need to know what this number is. Expected family contribution is calculated based off your income, your assets, number of kids in college, and even your retirement contributions. Examples of assets that count against you. The 529 that you've been saving in, that counts against you, unfortunately. And little brother's 529 counts against big sister. They lump it all together. It all counts against you. What a bum deal, right? And again, that's a default cookie cutter financial plan from a financial professional who really knows nothing about college funding. Not to attack them, that's not their forte, okay? 529 we'll talk about more in just a little bit. Assets that do count some more, savings, brokerage account, the equity net rental property, those all count, okay? Assets that don't count, the balances of your 401k, the IRA, the Roth, certain forms of annuities, others as well. So folks, you actually can get this EFC as low as possible. You have a right to move your money around. If your traditional financial planner isn't familiar with this, seek some outside advice there, because you can get your EFC as low as possible and the need as high as possible. That's the starting point for need-based aid. So you have control over your EFC. That's the takeaway from this slide. Okay, now let's talk about this financial aid test a little bit that I mentioned in the beginning of the workshop. So this is what we can do by giving you this financial aid test. Again, my assistant Mariah will send out an invitation to this, and we want to identify first and foremost which category of family you fall in. When it comes to college funding, we've identified 3 categories of families pretty much. Category 1, these are families with total financial need, meaning that income and assets are so low, you're going to get financial aid regardless of where your kid goes to school. However, everything has to be filled out on time and correctly, and you have to go to the right schools. Some schools give more free money, some just give a lot in loans. And a lot of loans to a low-income family is financially devastating, okay? I love to work with these families, making sure we maximize their financial aid. I've sent many of these kids to schools like Willamette, Gonzaga, Santa Clara over the years, and the family paid $0 to maybe $5,000 at the most to go to a $70,000 a year school. Pretty cool. Now, category 2 families, these are probably the majority of folks in our workshop. And you definitely want to identify if you're in this category because you comprise the bulk of that $1.7 trillion in debt. These families are paying the most for college, okay, in most cases. You will have financial need in some colleges, but not others. So you're either going to get a little bit of aid, a lot, or nothing at all, depending on how you're set up before you go through the process and what colleges you choose. So a lot of planning needs to be involved with these category 2 families. So we need to figure out if you fall in that category, or maybe you're a category 3 family where need-based aid is completely off the table. I'm sorry, get it out of your mind. That's okay, because need-based aid is usually pretty nominal unless you're a category 1 family. These families need to just focus on the merit-based aid, and you need to jump through the hoops to qualify for that, and also identify the college that can pay for that. Many colleges won't offer a lot of merit-based aid because all the kids that go there are really, really smart. And all families need to be concerned about how they're going to pay for college and how it also interacts with other financial goals, like your retirement. Think about a traditional financial planner, unfortunately. Think about it. To not plan for college funding is seriously dropping the ball. I've heard many financial professionals say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you can't worry about college. We need to worry about your retirement. That breaks my heart. We need to plan for college. Which one comes first before retirement? All right, sources of financial aid. Let's talk about the sources in depth, okay? First is our federal government. The federal government. When we talked about that, about 12% of that pie. This is where we have our Pell Grants and our SEOG grants. SEOG stands for Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. These are basically free money programs based off extreme need. I would say to qualify for these programs, you have to have no more than about $65,000 a year of adjusted gross income, depending on how many kids are going to college at the same time, okay? Next, we have college work study. This is also a need-based program. So when we do this formula, folks, you have to have need, cost of the college minus your EFC equals your need. You have to have need. You can have a shot at these Pell Grants, SEOG grants, and college work study. College work study is a great program if you qualify. On-campus job, maybe 10 hours a week, work in the library, get paid to do homework. I did work study, and many of my employers became references after college. This is a question on the FAFSA. Are you interested in work study? Trick question. Yes, no, or maybe are the options. Always put yes. If you put no or maybe and you qualify, they'll give it to somebody else. Next, we have subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans. They're also called direct loans now, okay? I need to update that slide. I always forget to do that. So subsidized and unsubsidized direct loans. I usually have another giveaway at this point for families, but of course I can't give anyway. I can't throw it through the computer screen there. So I always want to know, does anyone know the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans? There's usually only one person in the crowd that's brave enough to answer that. So if a loan is subsidized, that means no interest accrues as long as that kid's in college. Folks, I carried subsidized loans for 9 years while I went to college and didn't pay a drop of interest. It was great. No interest accrues. Unsubsidized loan means the interest starts to accrue right away. Now, both of these loan options are deferred until the kid's out of college, and interest rates are floating right around 5% or less. So I'm actually a fan of these loans. Now, of course, we want as much free money as possible, Pell Grants and scholarships and grants and work study and those things. But in my opinion, it's a pretty good deal if it's a subsidized loan where no interest will accrue. Definitely want to take that out. Next, we have the dreaded Parent Plus loan, okay? And why I call it that is I've seen this be the financial bane of too many families. So in March and April of the senior year, you'll start to get award letters from the colleges you've applied to. That'll be a breakdown of the financial aid they're offering. Grants, scholarships, loans, but then what's left over? The out-of-pocket cost, the unmet need. And they will offer this Parent Plus loan. It's 7% interest currently, folks. Ouch, 7%? You only have 10 years to pay it back, 10-year term, so those payments can get pretty big. It's unsubsidized, so it starts to accrue interest right away. And believe it or not, it starts out not deferred. They want money right away, too. They've actually allowed people to defer this now because it's gotten way out of hand. So let's do some math. I see many families have to borrow about $20,000 who've come to me over the years from this Parent Plus loan. 10 years, 7%, origination fees of about 4.25%. You do the math, it's about $250 per month. Well, that's not too bad, but you take it out year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4, you get caught in the loan stacking, as you see, and now you're paying $1,000 a month. Ouch, right? Then child number 2 comes up. Folks, I see that happen all the time. We must plan. Child 2 comes up. You don't want to look at another Parent Plus loan paying $2,000 a month over 10 years. Ouch. So there's other options, folks. There's private student loans out there. Please Google private student loans. An excellent loan program, in my opinion, compared to some of the other options. It's in the student's name, which is good. Folks, they have longer to work than us. We have to retire one day, right? Okay. Interest rates are based off the parents' income to debt ratio and their credit score. You know, it's in the student's name, but the parents have to co-sign on it, of course. You have 15 years to pay it off, which is pretty good. So again, Google private student loans. But remember, folks, do some research and do some math, please. Math is, you know, the ultimate truth, right? You study the numbers, home equity is still better than both of those options. Less than 4% over 30 years, it's a slam dunk, okay? And I wanted to make sure you understand too that I am not a fan of a HELOC or a home equity line of credit. Now you have 2 mortgages, 2 interest rates. I am a fan of a cash out refinance if it's done correctly and in some situations. All right, state government. Now this is where there are some special programs for in-state residents. How many kids really know what they want to do when they grow up? They may say so or think so, but they may surprise you, right? My point is there are some special programs for in-state residents who are interested in certain fields. Teachers, healthcare professionals. Contact your state higher education agency for more information. So the great program here in the state of Washington is WSOS, Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. Give that a Google. There's a special form to fill out for that, okay? And if you are interested in the STEM program, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, you can qualify for roughly about $23,000 over the course of 4 years. Now, if your kid changes majors, that's fine. You just won't qualify for that money anymore. But maybe take advantage of that process for the first couple of years. Again, I've done this all the time with families. It works, okay? Good. Also, something good to talk about the state governments is a program called WUI. You should definitely write that down. WUI. Let me write that down for you, folks. WUE stands for Western Undergraduate Exchange. And that's where these out-of-state state schools participate, and they're only a couple $1,000s more than in-state schools potentially. Google WUI, Western Undergraduate Exchange. Do not go to an out-of-state state school if it's not in the WUI program, folks. For example, Oregon State, not in the WUI program, and you're going to pay a ton of money in out-of-state tuition, okay? And there are grade and SAT requirements as well to qualify for WUI. So I've seen some smart students take all kinds of AP classes, crush their GPA, maybe have a 3.2 because of all these AP classes, and disqualify themselves from the WUI scholarship and end up paying more money. What do we learn from that? College identification, folks. It's all about identifying the college, the right colleges, so you have a good mix, and seeing what your criteria is to keep that cost down. All right. The college and university itself, who do you think has more money, the state school or the private school? The private school, right? They have their own endowment funds outside of state and federal funds. Some of these private schools have a lot of money, and they have a larger gap to fill. Just think, they have a lot of empty seats if they could not help out. Who can really afford $60,000 per year, right? And even if you could, you don't want to pay that much, right? $60,000 or more. But aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis. And that's true for many state schools and private schools. So a good tip to take here, a good note, is something called priority filing. Find out the college's priority filing date. As long as you get your forms in by this priority filing date, you'll be just fine. Over the years, folks, I've had families tell me, hey, Chris, I want my FAFSA filled out September 30th at 10 o'clock p.m. because I know they're in the central time zone. I want my FAFSA filled out first because I know it's available October 1st. That's completely crazy, folks. The college knows how much money it has, and it knows how many kids they're going to admit roughly. So as long as you get your forms in by this priority filing date, you'll be just fine. Here's another huge tip with that. It's not all about the FAFSA or the financial aid forms. You have to apply quickly too. That's why they have things called like early action applications. So the college won't even look at your financial aid forms until you actually apply too. Here's your FAFSA sitting in limbo until you apply. Oh, Sally applied, now we'll grab her FAFSA down, okay? If you get your FAFSA done quickly and you apply quickly, you'll be ahead of a lot of families, because I see a lot of families dawdle and wait because the child says, oh, application's not due until February or January. Oh, horrible mistake, horrible mistake. Last bullet point, Some colleges give preferential packaging to students who are in the top 25 percentile of applicants. So here's where you want to do some research, worth it. Build a list of colleges where your students could potentially be in the top 25 percentile of the incoming freshmen. Now, for example, you can't be in the top 25 percentile at a school like Georgetown, right? All the kids that go there are really, really smart. So you're not going to get merit-based scholarships from a school like Georgetown. But other schools like maybe Gonzaga and Linfield and Seattle University, Seattle Pacific, yeah, you could be in that top 25 percentile and get some excellent merit-based scholarships based off of high grades and high SAT scores, okay? We could talk about that for quite a while. All right, private sources. Are private scholarship services really even worth it? Very small percentage of all the aid. Don't spend too much time and effort going after the crumbs, but every little bit helps. So remember FastWeb. Definitely get connected with FastWeb. I will talk to many of you in part 2 of the workshop and say, hey, did you sign up for FastWeb? Oh no, we forgot. I have current clients that I've worked for years and their kids are not in college yet, and they still haven't signed up for FastWeb yet. Everybody sign up for FastWeb. It's free, and they will send you scholarship opportunities until you're completely blue in the face. And you'll see what I'm saying. Try to keep it local. The National Scholarship Services, kind of a lottery shot. Start asking around friends and family, about, you have kids coming up for college. Are there any company-sponsored scholarships? Also, another great website is Washboard, washboard.org. That's a great place for privately funded scholarships. But remember, please, do not spend too much time and effort going after the crumbs. After college identification, after homework and SAT or ACT prep, then we can do maybe 1 or 2 scholarship applications for privately funded scholarships per week. All right, so just a slide over there too. Let's talk about the FAFSA now. Let's talk about the FAFSA. I ask my crowds, hey, what does FAFSA stand for? Nobody really knows. Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Again, many people don't even know what the acronym for financial aid stands for. Again, a lack of information out there. Free Application for Federal Student Aid. But according to the Department of Education, right, how many of these FAFSAs do you think actually go in with some sort of mistake or inconsistency? And I usually have another giveaway here, okay? And families are all over the place. They're like, oh, 10%, 50, 80, 90, everybody's all over the place. Believe it or not, folks, 90% of FAFSAs, according to the Department of Education, go in with some sort of error. Huge, huge problem, okay? I've been doing the FAFSA for about 22 years now. I did it for myself for 9 years. I've done it for a company for quite a while. I love to look at FAFSAs. I always find a mistake in most cases. So the first mistake I see time and time again is where people can't even access their own FAFSA. So the high school will have a college planning night, and I usually talk about the FAFSA, and I always walk by these at the high schools, and I hardly see anybody in there most of the time. Be a part of that, please, okay? Because they start to talk about things like an FSAID. Write that down. Frank Sam Alpha, FSAID. This is how you access and sign the FAFSA. So students will get this and sometimes forget it, misplace it, not tell parents. Would you let your kids do your taxes for you? Well, of course not. You would be amazed how many kids spearhead the FAFSA, because you have a kind of a gung-ho parent that says, oh yeah, Billy, I want you to take this process head on all by yourself and we'll help you a little bit here and there. And the kid starts filling out the FAFSA on their own and makes all these mistakes. Don't do that. You want to be involved in the FAFSA. It's like your taxes, more or less. Even can be complicated, more complicated in some situations, okay? The next mistake we see time and time again is where they'll process your FAFSA, but of course there's an error or inconsistency on it. A good example of this was a client of mine. His name was Doug. He worked at Boeing. He was an engineer, aeronautical engineer, sharp guy. He was building airplanes for God's sakes. And he's just a FAFSA, just a form, right? I can fill this out. Well, he came back to us a couple of weeks later and said, hey, Chris, can you take a look at my EFC? It looks a little high. And sure enough, Doug had put some retirement assets in the wrong category, raised his EFC by $3,000 or so, and therefore eliminated that chance for financial aid. So when it comes to your income, folks, that's pretty hard to mess up, though people do, because there's a tool called the DRT, the Data Retrieval Tool. Make sure you write that down. Please take notes. Please stay engaged. I know it's tough just looking at your computer screen. DRT, Data Retrieval Tool. That's where they pull your income right from the IRS. So that's tough to mess up. Hopefully that works for you. It doesn't work for every family. But when it comes to assets, they just know what you tell them, okay? So again, you're kind of on the honor system there, but they do verify this stuff from time to time, okay? So again, if you make a mistake there, they're not going to correct you on your assets, okay? The next form is the CSS profile. Stands for College Scholarship Service. So we have the FAFSA. The FAFSA is required by nearly every college in the nation for federal funds, and the colleges use this FAFSA to get that EFC number. So they can use that EFC number to give you financial aid. But they also, some of the private schools, about 20% of the private schools in our country use the CSS profile, okay? Since they have more money, they want to know more about you. FAFSA is about 100 questions. CSS profile is about 300. It's a bear. I don't mind doing FAFSAs. I have a staff that does these for us now, but I always hated doing CSS profiles. They're a bear. They must be consistent. If it's not consistent with the FAFSA, they're like, what's going on? It can cause a delay. It'll hurt you for financial aid. Very ambiguous questions. Believe it or not, they ask on this form, how much do you think you could afford for college? What? I actually tell my clients to put 0 there. I mean, it's an ambiguous question. I don't know. I don't know how much I can actually afford. None, right? The purpose of these forms is to disqualify you from need-based financial aid. Not easy to understand and fill out. It's through College Board. College Board, write that down. Everyone should be on College Board. College Board is an excellent website. The school's own institutional forms, kind of the third hoop to jump through. The FAFSA, the CSS profile, maybe if you're looking at private schools, and the school's own institutional forms. Again, they must be consistent with the other forms. They usually ask you the same questions over and over again. They're giving you chances to perjure yourself, making sure you're consistent, right? So let me see here. The school will email you requesting these forms. How many emails do we get every day, right? A lot. Set up a special email just for college, okay? Because if you miss this email, you're not going to get your financial aid. They'll have these requirements, right? Verification. They want to verify the numbers. And again, I've seen this all the time. Students use their email address. They don't check their email. They're busy with soccer practice or AP exams, all that stuff. Set up a special email just for college. Make sure everyone has access to it and check it often during this process. Check the spam folder too. It's amazing. These automated systems, a lot of times will kick it to spam. It's messed up. All right. Additional forms, okay? If you have a business, time to get together those gross receipts. If you have a farm like myself back in Montana, old 160 acres on the old hobby farm for my grandpa, time to get some documents together on that. So you're gonna have a little bit more paperwork to fill out. Also, if you've been divorced or separated, I could give a whole workshop on a divorced or separated situation. Let's talk in part 2 of the workshop. Who do the forms go on? A lot of wiggle room there. You could qualify for a lot more financial aid than you think. So which colleges give you the best shot at getting money? I think you're gonna be surprised by this. A lot of people pick schools very haphazardly. They just assume because they don't make a lot of money or they have a very smart student that they're just gonna get a lot of financial aid potentially. It doesn't work that way. Some schools give a lot, some don't. Some give a lot in free money, some just give a lot in loans. Just think how nice it would be to know these things beforehand so you can shop, right? So a good way to illustrate this is let's work together on our easel here, okay? So I encourage you to follow along right here. This is getting into the real important stuff of the workshop. This stuff may not make any sense right now, but I promise you once you review your notes, it will, and we have Q&A session at the end. So let's say the cost of attendance at the college is $25,000. And that's the average in-state cost of attendance at a college, okay? Minus the EFC. How much need do you have? How much do you need? 15,000, that's right. Hopefully you're paying attention. So we need 15,000. So we do the FAFSA, it generates this EFC number. We need $15,000. Well, that's how much financial aid we're getting, right? Unfortunately, it's not that easy. So the term you want to become familiar with is called the percentage of need met. So out of the need you have, how much will college X actually help you out with? A little bit or a lot? So what we're looking for here is between 80 and 90% of need met. That means they're going to take care of a very high percentage of your need, right? But some schools, they just don't have as much money, so they can only help you out with maybe 50%. So for this example, they only helped you out with 50% of your need of 15,000. Well, that means they only help you out with half. So the other half of 15,000 or 7,500 comes over here to your side for a total of 17,500 out of pocket per year. And this can be the difference between going to college or not, or just taking out a lot of loans, because you will find this information out, but usually not until March and April the senior year. And by then it's just too late to apply to other colleges. So knowing this information beforehand, extremely tactful and very important. The next step is how they pay the money out. They pay it out in two ways. They pay it out in free money, which is in grants and scholarships, and self-help, which are in loans and work study. So an example of a good package should consist of 70% or more in free money, 30% or less in self-help. While other schools, again, they just don't have as much money, they can only give us a little bit in free money, and they just stick us with a bunch in loans. So you want to target schools, folks, that have a very high percentage of free money. That's going to help you get more financial aid, grants, and scholarships, and a high percentage of need met, because this will help keep your yearly out-of-pocket costs down. So of course you can still max out your retirement or something like that, right? So I'm sure many of you are wondering where this information comes from. Well, this is reported to the Department of Education in raw data form. And then with our affiliation through our parent company, we get that raw data. So we have this percentage of need met and free money for every college in the nation for our clients. Now, of course, we're not the only ones that have this. Of course not. But the information is scattered and it changes from year to year. And the college does not want you to go to their school because of this data. They want you to go to this school because it's a good fit for nursing, okay? This information definitely empowers families. So I'm sure Mariah is probably putting it up or emailing or putting it in the handout section, our case study here. Hopefully everybody can pull up this case study, and let's go over this case study a little bit together, okay? So we have Seattle Pacific University and Washington State University. Well, of course, it's way more expensive to go to Seattle Pacific, right? It's $59,000 per year, and Washington State's only $25,900. Let's take a look. Expected family contribution in both cases is $10,000. That means we need 49 at Seattle Pacific, and we need 16 at Washington State. But SPU typically meets 83% of need met. That's what we're looking for, with 78% in the way of free money. Awesome. While Washington State, only about 65% of need met, right around here, and only 56% in free money. So in the final breakdown there, about $32,000 in free money that we got from SPU, only about $6,000 from Washington State, and some nice loan options too, subsidized loans, no interest accrues. So final out-of-pocket costs for SPU, $18,350 and $15,578 at Washington State. Only a difference of roughly just under $3,000. Pretty darn close. So what's the takeaway, folks? Please do not shop for colleges based off a sticker price. We want to shop for colleges that have a very high percentage of need met and a very high percentage of free money. And at part 2 of the workshop, we can give this information to you for every college in the nation that you want to take a look at, okay? So how to negotiate for the best possible package. Many families are not aware that you can actually appeal and negotiate with the college. The college does not like that word, negotiate. They'll kind of frown upon that. We call it the appeal letter process, but that's what you're doing. You're appealing, you're negotiating, you're haggling for more aid. I see families not take advantage of this all the time. They just assume that the money they get from the college, the aid, is the best they can do. Huge, huge mistake. Some schools, they miss award. They make mistakes. I've seen it many, many times. More commonly, they may under award. They try to lowball a little bit. Again, they have a limited amount of funds to spread around to a lot of kids. Third bullet point's the biggest one. Some schools try to compete with other colleges. Try to build a list of colleges that's still similar priced competing colleges. Example, SPU, Gonzaga, Linfield, Santa Clara, similar price competing schools. Eastern, Central, Western, Washington State, those kind of schools, okay? It would be in your best interest to know whether or not to accept the first award letter and how to talk to the financial aid office to show them that you know what you're talking about. Hey, I did some research, and based off your percentage of need met and your percentage of free money versus loans, can you do any better? So here's a real life example from a couple years back from Carroll College in Montana, excellent school. The merit-based scholarship we got in the original offer was $12,000, a university grant based off of need of right around $2,000, some work study, some subsidized loans for a total aid of $22,000 per year. Well, you take the cost of the college, the aid offered, we're still about $28,000 short that needs to come out of this family's pocket. Well, we knew based off the family's situation and the college's historical information that they could do better. So we went back and negotiated, and actually they upped, if you can see, the merit-based scholarship by $5,000 per year. Everything else stayed the same, but this young lady was looking at multiple private schools. We had an excellent appeal letter. We could see that the college could do better. $5,000 per year, 4 years, that's $20,000 extra dollars. That is a lot of money to you and I. That is not a lot of money to the college. So do not be afraid to go back to haggle. Here's the big tip. Make sure the appeal letter is from the student. If it's from the parent, so let's take it, throw it right in the garbage. They've seen enough of those. All right, how to get more need-based aid. This is the fun stuff. This is my job. How to get more need-based aid by learning the legally established rules. How you can rearrange your finances. And again, many traditional financial planners, they don't care about this. They don't specialize in this. This is not in their wheelhouse. Good example of this is it's just like tax season, okay? When you go to H&R Block or we sit in front of TurboTax for 2 months trying to maximize deductions and pay less in taxes. But now you're doing it with the financial aid formula. So here is a real life example. If I can find it, from one of my clients. Now, I'm not sure how well you folks can see this, but this is a real life example from one of my clients, Matt, from a couple years ago. He had a son who was a junior in high school. His income was about $80,000 per year. So his income wasn't too high. He should have qualified for some decent need-based financial aid at Gonzaga they were looking at. But he had a ton of assets. He had $1.5 million in real estate assets. They had done quite well in real estate. And they also was their own business. So they kept their income down a little bit because of all the deductions and things like that. Well, his original EFC in this example is $70,000. His expected family contribution is $70,000. That means he has no need at pretty much any college in the nation, no need-based financial aid. Well, we were able to go back, reduce his EFC. We got these real estate assets in another category and got his EFC down to $12,000, which means he qualified for an additional $58,000 of aid per year. I know you folks probably can't see that, but an additional $58,000 in aid per year. So I'm sure many of you are inquiring, well, what did we do to do this? And this is a big reason why we offer part 2 of the workshop. I'm a fiduciary. Everyone's finances is different. Where your kids want to go to school, your income and assets, okay? So it's personal, okay? So I would say if your income is $220,000 a year or less, and you have a lot of countable assets, you can potentially change your EFC, maybe a lot like Matt here, and qualify for quite a bit more need-based aid. He ended up going to Gonzaga. His son qualified for an extra $5,000 a year in a university need-based grant. Times that by 4 years, it's $20,000 again. A lot of money, all right? I got invited to the graduation party, all right? So what if you make way too much money and you'll never qualify for need-based aid? You're a category 3 family. We need to identify that. I mean, you could have $1 million in your savings account. Who cares? You're not going to qualify for need-based aid anyways because your income is too high. Again, you have to jump through the same hoops to get merit-based aid. A good example of this was a doctor client of ours, came to a workshop live when we used to be able to give live workshops. Hopefully we can do that again someday. But smart guy, just gathering information, became a client. We did the FACET for them. We did the CSS profile, identified a great private school in California, Santa Clara. Had a very smart young lady, his daughter, got right around $22,000 of merit-based aid per year. He times that by 4 years, that's almost $90,000. That's a lot of money that he was getting ready to just throw out the window because he assumed he made too much money. And I actually see this happen all the time as well for the middle class families, category 2. They don't know that breaking point. They say, oh, you know, we make 150,000 or 140 per year. We're not going to get anything. Don't be that way, folks. Let's figure out where you're at. Just briefly on this, we're doing pretty well on time, I see. Tax implications, okay? So I could give a whole workshop on this as well too, but just to briefly summarize this, if you have a tax professional in your life, make sure they are aware you have kids coming up for college, and maybe seek out a college funding professional as well, because now's the time to be very, very careful with taking early withdrawals from your IRA, also being tactful, maybe if you have your own business on your adjusted gross income, those things. This can hurt you for financial aid, so be very, very careful. So what are your options? So what can we do as parents? How do we tackle this strategically? Well, first off, of course, just do it yourself. That's why many of you are maybe here tonight, just, you're do-it-yourselfers, which is perfectly fine. I'm glad you have come. But I have to tell you, okay, that personally, there is a ton of research and work that goes into this. If you're willing to devote a certain number of hours over weeks and months and years, you could potentially do this yourself and do it strategically. Again, ask yourself, do we, of course, solve our own medical issues or mechanics? And we hire professionals for many, many things. And if you don't have experience in something and you fall into it blindly, you could mess it up. And again, ask yourself, how do we get to $1.7 trillion in debt? And this is how. People falling into this process. I mean, you have a financial professional, right? Or you have a mechanic or a plumber, but you need to find someone who's a professional at college funding, okay? Again, there is a lot of money at stake. Your financial future and your child's is up for grabs. Next, you could let your accountant do it for you as well. So over the years, many accountants have actually referred their clients to us because tax formulas are completely different than financial aid formulas. And also a good takeaway from this slide is that there's different types of financial professionals. I've worked with many clients over the years that said, hey, you know, I'm gonna go take it to my accountant, or oh, I'm gonna have my financial advisor take a look at it, which is fine, but they don't specialize in college funding and can make huge, huge mistakes. I've had so many families just want to fund a 529. A 529 is not the best way to pay for college. If you have it, that is fine. It's good that you have some money saved for college, but Google the 529 and learn about it. It counts against you for financial aid, one, and little brother's 529 again counts against big sister. They lump it all together. It's in the market, so it's at risk. And recently, I've seen families lose tens of thousands of dollars on their 529. That's a bummer. That's their college savings plans. And also, it has to be used for college. It's control over your money. If the kids get huge scholarships, if they go military or ROTC and don't need that money, if you use it for anything else, you're taxed and penalized 10%. That's no good. So there are other options out there. I've seen some tax pros, they also advise on UGMAs or UTMAs. Good to write that down. UGMA or UTMA stands for Unified Gift to Minors Act. It's a strategy putting money in the student's name so you can pay less taxes. Well, that sounds good. But what most people don't know is that student assets, they count more than parent assets in the financial aid formula. A student asset will count against you at 20% against your ESC, while a parent asset at only 5.6%. So do not save for college in the student's name. Now the 529 is a parent asset for benefit of the student, so that's okay there. And then there are the services of a college funding specialist. Folks, this is what we do, a specialized niche in the financial industry where we focus on college, make sure a family can have a comfortable plan to pay for that, but then also focus on retirement without taking unnecessary risks. And so when you find a college funding specialist like ourselves, do some research here, okay? There's certain things that you definitely want to ask. Well, of course, what exactly do we do? You need to be very well versed in income and asset planning, knowing the ins and outs of this financial aid formula so you can reduce an EFC. What does sheltering assets mean? Which assets count, which ones don't? Many professionals don't know this, okay? Also, you need to have a database. And what this database can do is help you shop for colleges. We can pull pretty much this database on any college in the nation and show how much financial aid they offer, okay? So this is very powerful. Also, they need to understand how to fill out the forms, have a lot of experience in that. And again, it's just a FAFSA, it's free. People fill out by themselves all the time. But remember, about 90% of those go in with mistakes, so there's nothing wrong with getting help. And lastly, they know how to appeal for more financial aid. And we're actually in the appeal letter process right now. If you were misawarded or underawarded, can you go back and get some more money from them? The more time you give a professional to plan, the better, okay? So we sold these workshops in junior highs and elementary schools. I thought that was a good idea once upon a time because we wanted to get to families early to help them out. Nobody showed, right? Families weren't ready to face the music. As humans, we really don't address a problem sometimes until it's right in our face. So I'm glad you folks are here tonight, and I know many of you have younger children. Sometimes child number one is the guinea pig a little bit. All right, so what have we learned so far tonight, okay? We've learned there's a ton of false and misleading information out there about how to pay for college. There are literally billions of dollars of aid and tax relief out there if you know where to get it. A large percentage of forms going with errors or inconsistencies, and if this happens to your form, it can cause a delay. Also, some schools have a much better history than giving aid than others. Try to pick schools that offer more free money and less loans, duh, right? And also, lastly, don't be afraid to negotiate. Just like buying a car, there's a lot of money at stake. So the worst they can say is no, right? And there are ways to be tactful in appealing for more. So again, let's talk about this financial aid test. It's so easy to schedule this with us. there will be a link sent to you. You can get connected with our Acuity calendar and pretty much click and schedule this. 3 types of families that we can help. Category 1 families, finding those schools that have the maximum amount of financial aid. That is very, very helpful. And also making sure that everything's done on time and correctly. Families with partial financial need. These are the majority of our viewers during these workshops. You will have financial need in some schools and not the other. So it's very important. We want to maximize your need-based opportunities and also maximize your merit-based opportunities. And category 3 families, if you make way too much money, you need to know that now so we can just ramp up identifying merit-based opportunities. So let's talk about this financial aid test, okay? Part 2 of the workshop. Again, all this information I know has been very valuable, but it's so general in nature. This is an opportunity to make it personalized to you. So we have some requirements here though. It's completely free, of course, if you've attended the workshop. It's great if both spouses can attend. If you're married, if you are divorced or separated, we can actually also mail you the workshop on disc, a nice little interview with our president, Stuart Grossman. He's a true financial professional, so he's a little dry. That's why I give the workshops. I always pick on him a little bit. Hopefully the appointment can be scheduled in the next 3 weeks while this information is still fresh in your mind. And also get to get us some personal financial information. We will email you an items to bring list, okay? Just write down some rough estimates of your income, your assets, your students' GPA and SAT scores. That's all we pretty much need to give you a good financial aid test. And please remember, folks, there is no obligation. This is our deal with the high school. This is why they allow us to come to the high school. They are very picky about who they let come to the high school to talk to their parents. So this information is very valuable to let you know where you stand for financial aid. The benefits is we can, of course, calculate your EFC. Now, there are EFC calculators out there that you can do, but you have to fill them out correctly. So we can let you know your EFC very accurately. See how much financial aid you qualify for based off of state schools and private schools you are interested in. So bring me a list of colleges. I can pull this report for pretty much every college in the nation and show you how much it's going to cost you right now. Boy, wouldn't that be helpful for planning? Learning what steps you could take to get more financial aid. So like Matt here, well, what did we do to help him get more financial aid? I guarantee the majority of you out there have an opportunity to reduce your EFC. Learn the best ways to fund college expenses. I know that sounds extremely biased. The best ways, folks, do some research on our parent company, Strategic Education Technologies. We've worked with it all over the years and really developed arguably the best ways to pay for college. And I'll have that argument with any financial professional, and also learn the details of our program and see if we can benefit. At that financial aid test, we'll tell you what we do, if we think it's a good fit. Not every family is a good fit, of course. So we'll talk about what we do, we'll talk about our pricing, see if we can help you save some money. And that's pretty much our guarantee. If we cannot save you more money than you would pay us in a fee and offer more value, we simply won't work with you. So please grab your evaluation form here, okay, the evaluation form. Oh, good. And again, we want these returned to us. If you can, please send these back, folks. These are great for when you have your meeting with us, so we can kind of see what some of your dreams are, how you're thinking about paying for college. But on the back as well is a chance to tell me what you liked about the workshop. I played football for Eastern Washington University. I have very thick skin. You can't hurt my feelings. Tell me what you liked about tonight's workshop, what you didn't like. I look at every single one of these, always trying to make these better. Again, if we have a chance to kind of sit down one-on-one, a lot of great things can happen from it. And again, this will be using the tool GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar like we're doing now. So you can have a comfortable, safe meeting away from the COVID right in your house where it's nice and safe. And for everyone who makes a financial aid test tonight, our bonus to you will be my book. So we will send you a copy of my book, How to Give Your Child a 4-Year College Education Without Going Broke. And we will also give you the folder. This folder is great, a way to keep things organized, kind of fun. Keep the book in the folder, a lot of great handouts as well too. Next slide here, just talking about scheduling your family's evaluation, this financial aid test. Real easy to do. You can click right on that link right there. You can get to that Acuity link. Mariah is sending that out to everyone. She's doing a great job of doing that. Click on that, get an appointment. These times do go fast. We're at kind of the end of our workshop season here. My calendar is booked. And again, we offer this free, an hour of our time to help you out. That's our deal with the high schools and communities. So I'd like to leave all of you with a quote that really embodies our philosophy. A fool with a plan, right, can outsmart a genius with no plan. And so I will ask many of you, what is your plan to pay for college? And don't say, That's why I'm talking to you. Let's get a better answer than that. And for all of you who schedule quickly for this financial aid test, you'll probably talk to me, okay? I know many of you would like to talk to me. I also have two college funding advisors that I've trained that are just as good. But if you want to talk to me, make sure you schedule that quickly. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. We'll have time for a Q&A session right here. So blessings to all of you. Stay safe, and I'm looking forward to talking to you in part 2 of the workshop. Thank you so much. So Mariah, let's take a look at some questions. I see there's a lot of questions out here tonight.
So some of them I got to already answer.
Oh, look at Mariah answering questions, folks. Nice.
But these ones were really important for you to answer, I thought. So the first question is, what is the impact of parent retiring mid-college, i.e. older parent?
Oh, that's an excellent question, folks. Very common, okay? So it's a good thing of you're retiring actually mid-college or right before college, because income is going to be reduced significantly. And the FAFSA is filled out every year. So we can take advantage of that, all right? So it's very important that everything's filled out on time and correctly, but also where your assets sit. Perhaps you're a family that's retiring, you make $200,000 a year. Now you're retiring, you're only maybe making 80, 120, but you have a lot of countable assets that maybe you want to protect for retirement and want to protect from the financial aid forms. When it comes to sheltering assets, it's about protecting them from the financial aid forms. So yeah, let's talk. But again, that's a good strategy if you're going to retire mid-college.
I had another one ask, do you sign up for FastWeb in parent's name or student's name?
Oh, that's an excellent question. You know, I'm not 100% sure there. Go to FastWeb right now and check it out. I'm pretty sure you can do both. I think you can put it in there. I think it has an option that you can join as a parent or a student and actually put the student's grade in there. You can start applying and looking at these privately funded scholarships as early as 9th grade, I believe. So yeah, I think you can do both, but do it as a student, okay? Quarterback a little bit as a parent. Put the student's name on everything.
This one's a really good question. How do you move around real estate assets?
Oh, good question, folks there. So that's why we offer part 2 of the workshop. As a fiduciary, folks, I don't want to give a lot of general information that someone out there that they may use that, and if it doesn't work out for them, I can get in trouble and lose my license. But when it comes to real estate assets, for example, it depends on how they sit. Perhaps they're in a business and some other things as well, and how you log them on your taxes, okay? So let's talk about that. You can ask me that question in part 2 of the workshop, where it's more of just a one-on-one.
All right, and our last question is, does the 529 count against the parent if the grandparent created it?
Well, that's a great question. Boy, we got some good questions here tonight, folks. So huge question to do some research on. Give this a Google for me, okay? 529 grandparent FAFSA. You know, it's all about how you search for stuff in Google. We actually took a class in college on how to use Google. Keywords, short and sweet. 529 grandparent FAFSA. It'll come up with a great article that talks about this, okay? So if the 529 is in the grandparent's name, it will not count against you on that student's FAFSA. Awesome, right? Sounds pretty good at first. But they're on top of this, okay? So what happens in the next year of college, that gets counted as student income. And believe it or not, student income gets counted against that student at 50% after a certain amount. So if that student makes more than right around 6,700, I believe is the current number, anything above that will count against you at 50%. So let's say, for example, you have to pay $20,000 per year from a grandparent's 529. As soon as we get above that 7,000 roughly, that extra 13,000, half of that, or 6,500, is going to raise that EFC. So again, I would actually try to rather have that 529 in the parent's name, because it's going to end up counting against that family less. But again, those are all things that we can talk about in part 2. Any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. I think this webinar was recorded. I think maybe somebody said thank you, or there's another question maybe, or Mariah's taking care of it.
Yep, I'm taking care of it.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming, folks. And please get yourself a free book. We will mail all this stuff to you on our dime to get you this free information. It's very valuable. You're going to learn a lot of great stuff from it. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time virtually. Good night, everyone.
A lot of people say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.